Hi, welcome back, Superpower Alliance. I'm so excited for today's guest, Jacob Hodges. Jacob is, I know Jacob because he's part of a group that I use for our financial planning. And I get to say so many good things about our experience with you and with your group. It's just been, I think peace of mind is the phrase that I use all the time. When I tell people, listen, go ahead and invest because the peace of mind is worth every single cent. So before I get into it, Jacob, thank you. I know that you're, busy, and I just really appreciate you donating your time and your willingness. So thanks.
Well, really appreciate you having me on, Kelly. And as nice as you say it is to work with us, we love working with you and Jeff as well. It's been a pleasure to help you guys tackle some financial challenges as you go through your planning.
Yeah, and we'll get to, I mean, I think they really, you'll hear some of those challenges in my questions. And so, part of that obviously is being a business owner. And that's a really different conversation, and being self-employed, that's a different conversation than just, let's say if you're working for a corporation or something like that. But before we get into the financial piece, Jacob, I asked everybody this first question, okay? And it might be a little bit of a weird question for you, not being in our field, but this is a very therapist thing to ask. I always ask people, what is your superpower? And just for those of you that are kind of new to Superpower Alliance, I'm not thinking of superpower as this like shiny special skill, like I'm good at, math or whatever. It's more about what is the thing that maybe you wouldn't have talked about, but have kind of recognized, actually, this is a strength, and this, hidden part of me, now that I've embraced it, I actually use it in my work. So how would you answer that question? What's your superpower?
Well, I think it's a great question, and one that I really need to think about a little bit. But I would say that my superpower, the part of me that maybe I didn't consider a strength growing up or earlier in my career, that I think has become a really a strong part of my practice as being a financial planner, is that I'm a very introspective and a little bit of a slow thinker. I tend to analyze things quite in-depthly. Growing up, I was told that I would overanalyze things, which tends to, cause a little bit of analysis paralysis. And, working through that, I've been able to kind of curtail some of the negatives of overthinking things, but also parlay that into being a really good listener, because I tend to think about things so in-depthly or reflect on them. I tend to listen to people I'm talking to very, very intently, and pick up on things that maybe that they are not saying, and that leads me to make some deductions on their goals and things they want to pursue financially. A lot of times, especially when you're working with couples, it's not necessarily what they are saying or what one spouse is saying that is the goal, but oftentimes it's what the other one isn't saying or isn't commenting on that is really a high priority for that individual. So being able to pick up on those subtle cues really helps me to be a more effective financial planner, because we can kind of tease out over multiple conversations what this couple really wants to be working towards, and make sure that the plan that we're laying out, the investment goals, the investment plan, is aligned with both parties and not just the one that's voicing voicing the loudest.
Jacob, if you ever just like don't make it as a financial planner, come talk to me. You can make an amazing therapist. Everything that you said, I'm like, that's what we do. That's amazing.
I often joke that I should have gotten a degree in psychology instead of finance and economics, because it might have been more effective.
No, you're a great financial planner, but that I can understand how that I hear you, what you're saying about the overthinking or overanalyzing. It's also something that makes you, it's like you really care. And so you take your time to really hear, right? So I love that. And I can see how that would be a huge strength as a financial planner. Okay, so for those of us that are listening, for those that are listening that have been maybe a little hesitant to, you know, like actually hire a financial planner, like, do I really need that? Like, I don't know. What would you say is the benefit of hiring a financial planner?
Well, it actually addresses one of the statements you just made, which is I don't know. So I think a primary benefit of working with a financial planner is the clarity that comes along with it. If you're working with someone that you trust that has truly listened and crafted a plan that addresses all of your concerns, your needs, and aligns you towards your goals, then all of a sudden you have clarity in what you need to be doing now and where you're going. So we have an assurance when you have that trusting relationship that all of the different mechanisms in your financial life are aligned and working towards a definite goal. If you don't work with a financial planner or you're trying to do it yourself, a lot of times there's just that ambiguous, I hope I'm doing what I need to be doing, not I'm confident I'm doing what I need to be doing. And that takes up mental real estate and causes a little bit of underlying stress. And it's our goal to remove that from our clients' lives so they don't have to think, I hope they know that they're doing what they need to be doing. So there's a peace of mind in knowing that somebody's herding the cats that are in your financial life.
I mean, that's exactly what I was saying in the beginning. That was our experience that, honestly, I remember looking at Michael, you're the owner of your group, and I said, do we have enough money to even justify needing a financial planner? Like at the time we were in a very different place. And because I really didn't get it, right? But then after having gone through the process with you and now having actually worked the plan, the peace of mind is the thing that I keep going back to. Like we actually take more risks now because we know what we have and what we need to do to reach our goals. So Jeff and I take more financial risks than we did before having, because that was right, Jeff. That was one of the things was like, you need to like go on vacation. That's what Michael said. And so it was, you never know going into it what it's going to look like on the other side. So Jacob, I feel like we didn't get lucky. We hired a financial planner before you and did not have a good experience. And I don't want to go too into that, but I think that it is really important. You said someone you trust. So there are different models of financial planning. I've learned that the hard way. What would you suggest if you were telling your best friend, right, who's not going to have you as a financial planner? What would you say? Here's what you need to look for in looking for a financial planner.
Say, a very quick test or a quick threshold that they need to meet is they need to be a CFP or a certified financial planner. That shows that this individual is dedicated to pursuing the highest level of financial planning that they can provide for clients. And it also shows that they've taken a step to pursue additional educational opportunities and passed a pretty rigorous test in order to call themselves a certified financial planner. That's kind of the highest threshold in our industry for planning, and one that I wouldn't work with someone who didn't have that or wasn't actively pursuing that. The second thing that I would want to recommend friends and family to look out for is if somebody starts recommending solutions to problems very early on in meeting you. If somebody has a solution without firmly grasping your problem, then they are a salesman or a saleswoman and not a planner. And although there are great applications for people who are great at sales, and their solution may luckily address part of your problem, there's no way that they've been able to put together the right plan, the right strategy in order to address your concerns and align you towards your goals if they haven't taken the time to learn and ask questions and really get a strong grasp on what's going on in your financial life. So if they're recommending solutions before they get to know you, that's a big red flag that they're probably not leading with planning, they're leading with sales.
Hmm. Oh my gosh. Again, same thing in therapy. I just, so many overlaps here. Yeah, I think our first financial planner was a salesman. And so just what that looked like for us is once the deal was done, we couldn't get in touch with him. So we never heard from him again. If there was a problem, it was really hard to, like, just with the account or whatever, like it was really hard to even remedy that. So that makes so much sense. And I love how you, that's like a good kind of those two tests. That's really helpful. Okay. So as we talked about before we started the recording, everybody that's listening is more than likely self-employed in private practice, which means, you know, we're business owners, and if we're not working, we're not getting paid. And so what do you think we should be thinking about specifically when planning for our future? I know that's kind of a big question, but in your experience in working with business owners, what's important to be thinking about?
Well, my experience is that business owners are very good at what they do, and they are very focused on what they do. But then, like you said, there are things, what do you need to be thinking about in the future? Well, oftentimes it's, well, I need to make payroll. I need to make sure the lights are on, there's bills. The hats that you wear as a business owner are seemingly endless. So I would say that one primary goal or one primary concern in the future, if you're talking about retirement planning, is that there is a little bit of a trade-off when you own your own business. You don't have an employer sponsored plan that's provided to you. And when I say employer sponsored plan, it's 401k, 403b, those plans that have a matching percentage that go on if you're working at a big corporation. Those are great. That's a benefit of being an employee, but as a business owner, you don't have that. What it does afford you the opportunity to do, though, is to craft an employer-sponsored plan that's really caters to your needs. So you can create your own plan. Since you are the owner, you are both employer and employee. So you can kind of work with a financial planner to really pick which option is best for you. And then they can craft the plan design to be more catering towards your specific goals. So I would say one big objective, if I'm a business owner, is to find an advisor who's going to help me create that plan and to create it sooner rather than later. It's good for you. It's good for your employees. It helps with retention. There's a whole host of positives, but that's one thing that I think falls by the wayside in opposition when you're focusing on more immediate needs for the business.
So, okay, when you're talking, the biggest obvious thing is retirement. Having to have something since, you are the employer and employee, like you said. Now, let me kind of throw this at you. So a lot of people who are listening don't have, it's just them. They're solo practitioners, and not everybody, but a lot of people are. And so what if their partner has a retirement plan? Do you suggest, oh, that should be good for your family, as long as that's, like, let's say their partner's in a big corporation, they've got the good retirement thing going. Do you suggest still looking at retirement just for that solo practitioner? What would your recommendation be there?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to have to say it depends. That's a situation that is very dependent on that individual couple's goals. So depending on what level of financial goals they're seeking to attain, that singular employer-sponsored plan combined with some sort of value that's being built in the practice itself may be adequate to accomplish all of those financial needs in the future. However, if they have some very lofty goals, for retirement or lifestyle, it may not be adequate. At that point, we would need to just do some projections, have some conversations, and really figure out what they need to build over time. So that'd be me, not wanting to, give a solution before I fully grasp the problem.
Yeah, well, you're a great financial planner. I mean, I think that makes sense, right? It really just depends on the situation and probably how much money each person is actually making in their individual jobs. So that makes so much sense. I think for us, before, I mean, I didn't have a retirement. Remember, is that right, Jeff? Until I
Yeah,
started.
I mean, I was working full time,
Yeah.
for someone else when we first saw you guys. And so that was a completely different situation than we are, where we're now relying on Kelly's group practice. I think you were working maybe a couple days a week back then, Kelly. So yeah, it's a very different situation, which is also another positive, is that checking back in every year, we're making sure we're all on the right track, and things change, have changed quite a bit since 2017 when we first did this. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the point. We needed to be able to check in and to continue to plan, not just one plan, but to continue to plan. I mean, that has been like, oh, I mean, just a godsend. Okay, I'm just kind of going down our little list here. And okay, so kind of like close to the last question, but as you work with business owners, what do you see as the biggest blind spot when it comes to them managing their money and having a financial plan and working the plan, all of that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a piggyback on that question that I kind of touched on just then, but the underlying obstacle for business owners or practice owners is that they're incredibly busy. You're wearing dozens of hats, you're keeping the lights on, you're keeping people paid, you're doing your payroll. I mean, sometimes people don't have help. They're doing all those things themselves, plus trying to be a therapist or trying to be effective in whatever career path they've chosen. And that's really where a financial advisor comes in and is very valuable, because the needs of the business oftentimes overshadow the personal financial needs of that business owner. And that causes the goals or the savings needs or the retirement planning to really fall by the wayside in favor of the immediate needs of the business, which would never fault somebody for putting the needs of their business or prioritizing that. But when a financial advisor or planner, someone who can step in and advocate to you for you, just as a reminder that, hey, this is great, we're really glad your business is growing, but we need to also address some of these background concerns that aren't really that high priority right now, but will become very high priority, oftentimes too late to do something about them. Whenever you can have that yin and yang, that symbiotic relationship of two forces working together for your own financial success, you really get this situation where you can focus on what you're passionate about, focus on building the business, growing the business. And then you have someone behind the scenes focusing on making sure that all of the tools that we need to use are being used to ensure that all this hard work you're putting into comes to a fruitful, successful retirement or partial retirement, or just a successful financial outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. It's like you see how busy business owners are and how, of course it makes sense. They need to put a lot of energy and investment into the business itself. But when they're not trusting the big picture financial piece with someone else, or at least with a helper, right? Then that could just get missed completely.
Yeah, it's a great point about the personality of someone who's willing to step out and create their own business, manifest this thing out of thin air, essentially, is that's oftentimes a very independent and a very driven person and a very capable person. It's someone who, has the capacity to do a lot of things well, but they've chosen one specific endeavor and put their time and their passion towards that. So it's not a question of if they can manage their finances. It's a question of, do they have the time to, do they want to? And hopefully, we can step in and allow them to focus on what they are passionate about. And then they can kind of take their hands off the wheel a little bit in the financial retirement planning piece, which can be hard since you're an independent, or since, business owners are independent driven people. They oftentimes don't want to take their hands off of it, which is a little bit of it can be a tense or, challenging conversation, but hopefully through, reiteration that they are ultimately in control, and we're just kind of guiding and advising, that we can get them to the point where they're comfortable letting us run the show on the financial planning piece.
Yeah, well, I can understand why what you talked about in the beginning of really listening and earning trust, that's so important, right? Because it makes sense. Yeah, someone who's pretty successful and independent, they don't want to just hand this part over. So you're having to really earn trust, but actually listen well, so that it is a good plan and it makes sense for the needs and the big picture, all of that. Okay. I love this. I'm going to pause real quick and just check in and to see if there's any questions. And if not, that's okay. I can okay. So I have a business owner group. Okay. And there's like several of us that, we have like a text chain, and we all have group practices. This isn't just a question for group practice owners, it's for anybody. But there's this talk about kind of non-traditional retirement, right? Like moving away from the old school, you work, however many 30 plus years, and then you don't work, right? And some people call it half retirement, where you're taking, maybe you, I don't know, it feels like year-round school, right? Where you take longer breaks. And so you're kind of gradually working less, just trying to spread it so it's not so. Anyways, I think you get the idea. But what I just would love to know your thoughts on this, and kind of how even just your personal opinion about it, right? Like it really, I'm sure there's different schools of thought, but yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I love the idea conceptually. I do. I'm a big proponent of living life, and sometimes that is contradictory to what people expect. They expect me to just say you need to hoard away all your acorns for your whole life, and then even in retirement, don't spend them. Just stay home and pass on money. But I am a big supporter, or I recommend people to, you work hard and you should enjoy it, but everything needs to happen, with a plan. Can't be an accidental decision or something that's made on a whim. We've kind of already touched on it, but life is very, very dynamic. Things change all the time, even when you are currently working full time. And adding in a reduced work schedule, which oftentimes may increase your fun expenses, that adds an entirely new set of variables. So you have a situation where you're oftentimes spending more time doing fun things and less time earning money, and that reduces your margin for error on your savings and investments. So what that means is you need a very, very clear, specific plan. You need firm spending structures that allow you to do what you want within reason, but you also need to know how much you're going to work each year, and you need firm earning structures as well. So it's a situation where, although you're giving yourself this freedom, you're almost being even more disciplined in other aspects of your life to allow yourself that freedom. I know I sound like a broken record when I say you need a plan, but you really need a third party, someone who is not connected to how much time you spend in Europe, that's going to help you navigate the the multitude of variables and making sure that you're staying within the bounds of the plan that you've set out. So it's a lifestyle choice that is, very desirable, but one that needs to be very intentional when it's made. It's not a level of freedom that you can just say, I want this, and then you do it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself, kind of up a creek without a paddle. But if you are very intentional and you hit the right X's and O's leading up to that, I do think it's possible to achieve that and still be financially stable and responsible.
Yeah. Do you think it just takes, it's like the long game, like you have to really be so intentional. So it's funny because it's like the idea is you don't have this break off, right? Retirement, not retirement, but even in this conceptual, right, where it's not that kind of drastic thing, that even that, it still takes so much planning, because the reality is, if you're off in Europe having fun, especially for business owners, right? If we're not working, we're not getting paid, and we're spending money on said vacation or whatever. So I think I hear what you're saying. Like, it's great, but you have to be so intentional. You still have to make it happen. Like, the money has to come from somewhere.
Right. You do not slip and fall into this ideal lifestyle, but you can work your way there over time if you're willing to be intentional and stick to your plan.
You don't slip and fall into this ideal lifestyle. I love that. Oh, I feel like as you say that, there's so much, this would be an interesting conversation. There's so much emotion that comes with money. I don't know, when in your office, when people maybe get anxious about, like, so I'll give you an example. I remember coming out of the first financial planning meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to work for what at that point, 20 more years. Like, it was this, of course so, right? But in order for this to actually, like, college, retirement, like all the things, like I just saw it on a piece of paper, and it was really sort of startling. Like, it took me a minute to be able to like almost accept that. And which, I know that sounds ridiculous. Like, Kelly, what did you think? You were going to slip and fall into a perfect lifestyle and not work? But it was very kind of sobering. And it has been such a gift ever since. Like, once I accepted that, then it was just a matter of working the plan. But yeah, I would love to hear from you. I didn't tell you guys that. I was trying to be professional and just whatever, but maybe people do tell you. Maybe people say, what are you talking about? I have to work this long, or we only are going to make this much at retirement if we continue doing what we're doing. Or, I mean, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's, oftentimes the conversation or the tension is around, so at our current savings rate, we're only going to have X amount at retirement. And obviously we can't guarantee those numbers. It's just kind of a loose approximation using our best historical data. But when you tell someone this is what you're going to have at retirement at your current savings rates, and that is going to equate to this lifestyle or this level of annual income in perpetuity through the end of your plan, that oftentimes is the sobering moment for clients. And unfortunately, a lot of times, more often than not, it's not as much as they would like to have. It definitely does not match the lifestyle that they're currently living. So then the conversation is, assuming we have enough time, let's make small sacrifices now to increase savings so that we can have big benefits down the road. And that is where an advisor is, that it's really hard to put a number on the value that they provide, is if they can make you make those, or keep you responsible or committed to those small changes over the next 30 or 40 years, all of a sudden you end up with a very, pleasant retirement, a high standard of living, and you get to do all the things you want to do. Or you think, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and by the time you get there, you can't make any changes. So there is a lot of let's spend less now so we can spend more in the future. And people love when I tell them that at parties. I have a lot of fun. There's usually a big group around me telling me to tell them how they can save more money again for when they're 65.
Yeah, it's not fun. You're right. It's not fun. And it's not sexy. It's like, ugh, but that sobering moment, I'm so glad that you said that other people, that's normal. And I love what you're saying about small sacrifices now and kind of painting a picture for what that can mean, right, for the future. So we've got one question from Carol, and Carol, if you could just unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask your question, I think that'd be great.
All right, I'm going to look back at my question. One question I have, Kelly feels fortunate to have found you and set up these meetings. How long do you typically think it takes, since you're not selling something to her or selling plans? How long does it take? Does it take 1 meeting, 10 meetings, ongoing meetings? And if people are seeking out a certified financial planner who is going to deliver a quality service, what is it, the general cost for something like that?
Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate you coming off mute and asking it. I love when there's engagement from the audience. Makes me feel like we're having a good conversation, Kelly. So to address the first question you have, which is how long. So we do charge for planning, so that is a little bit of a transaction that we have on the front end. If your question is in relation to how long it takes before you can make recommendations, that is typically and feel free to hop off mute and tell me if I need to address a different part of it. But
yeah, I guess I'm thinking, I know the hesitancy can often be, when I hear my peers talk about this, is somebody's going to try to sell me some plan that benefits your organization.
Oh, okay.
Are there people who just will sit with you and you can pay them, like you, just to look at your current your business and your finances and your long-term plan? And that's it. You're not trying to sell me something to invest in some plan.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically, that type of advisor is going to charge an hourly rate. So they're just going to charge an hourly rate to review your financial situation at that point, and they may give recommendations at that for extending beyond that. It would be up to you after that to implement those recommendations. Technically, when we do a financial plan for clients, that is what we do. We charge an hourly rate. It comes at the end of it. There's an official document that you have that is your financial plan, and there is a little bit of a diverging of the paths at that point. Someone can either take that and leave and go implement it themselves, or they can kind of say, hey, you built this plane, why don't you fly it too?
Okay.
And so then at that point, we would implement their plan for them, and oftentimes move accounts and do various other behind the scenes logistical things that occur. So yes, that is kind of the method at which, and then your second question was, how much does it typically cost? And that is very much, there's a wide range on that. There are people who will say they will do financial planning for free, and I would not recommend that. Not saying that there's no one that does it for free that is out there that does a good job, but I wouldn't go to a therapist who wasn't going to charge me for their time, because that kind of tells me how much they value their time. So for me, I would definitely go with someone who's going to charge you, and they can range. Typically, you're going to see somewhere between on the low end, $1,500 to $2,000, all the way up to on the higher end, $5,000 if there's really some complex stuff going on, with an average normal being, anywhere from $3,000 to $3,500 to $4,000 being the middle range there. I think that's very reasonable for the value that you get over time.
So you're saying at that point, sorry for the background noise. I'm in my daughter's bookstore. I'll mute when I finish my question. So at that point, there's paying for that plan, meeting with you, getting educated about what the long-term picture looks like. And then there's a choice. There should be a choice at that point of doing this on your own, or perhaps having somebody like you who knows what they're doing implement it. And then is there sort of an ongoing fee that goes with doing that with you? How does that work?
Yes. So there's two pieces from that point forward, and that's when you really enter into being an ongoing planning client of our firm. And it's much more, there's a lot of things that go into ongoing planning. I know, Jeff and Kelly mentioned that, employment can change, how much you're working, where you're working. You may want to, leave your corporate job and focus on, a practice, or teaming up as spouses to, further your personal goals. Those are things that life can throw at you. And then there's curveballs you don't see coming. And those are all part of financial planning. So the ongoing fee is just a continuation of that hourly rate, extended into an annual basis. So we assume that we're going to spend at minimum 8 hours per client per year, meeting with them, doing reviews of their accounts, making sure everything is staying in line with their goals, and updating their plan. So that at our hourly rate, that comes out to be about $2,000 a year. There's also an asset under management fee that's connected not to the planning itself, but to the investment management that we handle for clients as well. And that's on a sliding scale depending on the size of accounts. But if you average it out, it's typically 1.2% to 1.5%.
That helpful? Okay, good. Yeah. Carol, I think that question probably most people have. So I'm really glad that you asked that. And I think, Jeff, you had something.
Yeah, well, I have a comment first and then a question after that. The comment is, I just remember when we went through this process, and it felt like a squeeze at first, just like what we were talking about. But then it's almost like you feel the squeeze, you see where the end result could be, is most likely to be in 20, 30 years. And then as you're working the plan, things just kind of open up. And so to have the peace of mind that you're on track, and that you have so-and-so percentage of success based on the model that you guys use, and you feel good about, oh, great, we're in a good spot. And as long as we just keep doing this same thing for where we are, then it eases the stress. So it's like you feel the stress at first, make the changes, the shifts you need to make, and then you feel more at ease as time goes on. So I feel like that's been our experience. One thing that I did want to ask for you to do, because you've already done it for us, but I wanted to see what you would say. There's specific kinds of retirement that are for self-employed people, and funds that can be set up for that purpose that help with taxes and that sort of thing. So it might be getting a little bit into details, but I think it's important for people to hear some of these options that are out there that I didn't know about, when we first started talking with you. So what would you say for self-employed people are some good options for them in the funding or funds realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So, solo practitioners are primarily going to use one of two options, and it really depends on how much they want to save per year and how much flexibility they want to have in that amount to adjust it. One is a solo K, which is a solo 401k. And that is exactly what it sounds like. There's no real secret sauce there. If you've ever had a 401k with a larger company, it allows you to defer a pretty large amount of your income per year, and you get a tax deduction if you choose to do that in the traditional sense from your taxable income for the year. The other is a SEP IRA, which is Simplified Employee Pension IRA, which allows you to deduct a percentage of your income per year. And, these two, there's a lot of similarities. They're both tax deductible. It really depends on how much money you're making, how much you want to save. There's a few variables behind the scenes that help us pick which one is the best. And then once we have that selected, we can move on into how much we're going to save or what percentage we're going to save. For a practice owner that maybe has a number of employees underneath them, it's likely going to be a plan that's a simple IRA. That functions very similarly to a small company's 401k with slightly lower deferral percentages. It's simple for small business owners to run because there's not a lot of oversight from the government on matching and deferrals and the logistics behind the plan. You don't have to hire, if you run a 401k, that you have to hire a third-party company to come in and audit it to make sure you're treating your employees fairly. And now I am getting too far into the weeds, so I'm going to stop there. But those are three really good options: a SEP IRA, a solo 401k, or a simple IRA for small practice owners or solo practitioners to set themselves up to have an employer plan that lets them to defer for retirement.
Yeah, it is a little in the weeds, but it's also, people are listening to this because they're looking for very specific financial planning stuff. And so that's something that, I'm glad that you touched on, because like Jeff, we had no idea that there was even a retirement option specifically for our business owners that would make more sense. And that would have tax benefits. We had no idea. And so that's part of, that's the thing, we wouldn't have known to even ask that question or look for that if we didn't have you. Right. And so I think that's the other thing that, there's just, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Right. So even if you do a Google search, like if you don't have the right search, you're not going to get the right information. So that's something I'm really grateful for. Is I think it was one of our check-ins that we were just looking at the overall plan and how it was going. And you guys made that suggestion and we went in that direction. And, so there's lots of moments like that we've made tweaks along the way, and we would have not even known that it was something to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Before I kind of talk about how people can get in touch with you and your group, and then if it's even possible, that's one thing I'm wondering about. Is it possible to work with therapists? We can't work across state lines. I don't know what that's like virtually for you, like kind of your reach, because I think, what you have to offer personally in your company, is really wonderful. That very thoughtful, intentional, really listening, not salesy. I would say that's the way to go, right? And, if you don't know that exists, because that's kind of Jeff and I, right? We just stumbled upon, it was like a friend of a friend, and it was terrible. But yeah, just before I go into that, anything we haven't covered that you think we should talk about before we wrap up?
I think one thing, and you mentioned it in sort of the introduction, is that you and Jeff weren't sure if you had enough money to work with an advisor. And I get asked this question all the time, and it's oftentimes when I bring it up to people, when I bring up being their advisor, they're like, well, I don't really have enough money to work with an advisor. And I always kind of try to find a nice way to say that you might be thinking about it from the wrong perspective or viewing it through the wrong paradigm. It's not so much how much money you have right now. It's, do you have goals that you would like to be working towards? And are you committed to those goals to the level that you're willing to let someone else guide you there? And that's really important, because no one starts out, or most people don't start out with a vast amount of wealth, but everyone has the capacity or the capability, if they give themselves enough time, to build wealth and to be able to accomplish impressive financial goals. The biggest determining factor in whether you're successful or not is how early you start and whether you stay committed to that pathway or that plan over a long period of time. So I would say the question is not how much do you have right now, it's, do you have something financially related that you want to accomplish, either in the short, medium, or long term? And are you willing to work with someone who's going to help you accomplish that? And if you can find somebody you trust and you feel good about and you enjoy talking to, that you want to have very similar conversations over the next 30 years with, then I recommend starting to work with an advisor sooner rather than later, because it makes things a lot easier if you work with someone sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so I think the way that I'm hearing what you're saying is it's actually a myth that financial planners are for wealthy people.
They're for everyone, both people who are wealthy now and people who would like to eventually be wealthy. However you define wealth, that's subjective, but I think a big part of it is controlling your time, and you need to build some monetary wealth to do that.
Yeah, it's really about reaching goals and setting yourself up to success by starting early, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know why we started when we started, Jeff. I feel like we got, because for me, it felt like I said, is this even necessary? But
Yeah.
we started as early as we did. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I think it was funny. It must have been a conversation with someone, but we ended up doing this, and then we got our will together and kind of everything all at once within a few months. We just like, we've got to get our lives together. So that was what we did, and we're grateful for all the people that we found around our area who could help us with that. And I will say that it almost in reference to what you asked, Carol, a little while ago, is that once we had the meetings with you all, Jacob, it's more of a set it and forget it until the next check-in. Everything is, once we've determined which amounts go where, it's like we just got to make sure the money's there, and then every month it's just going in, it's doing its job. And then we just need to check in when our goals change or when our employment situation changes. So yeah, that's kind of been our ongoing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, that's the peace of mind, right? Because we're not having to think about how much do we save here every month, reworking some budget, or I hope that's enough. Yeah, it's just kind of this automatic, it is what it is. You work the plan until something big happens that the plan could change. And so even, it's, to me, it feels like big picture, and they go together, big picture and monthly, right? So what happens in your monthly kind of personal budget directly impacts the big long-term plan. But yeah, I think Jeff and I, we're not ever thinking about, oh gosh, are we going to retire and when? That's just not even in our question. It's just, working the plan. So, Jacob.
Really, there was one thing that you said earlier that I think it was before we were even on the call. And I wanted to make sure that it was in here somewhere, because I think it was really good. It was, once we had the plan in place, you felt like we could take more risks financially, because you know where we're headed. Once you know where you're headed financially and the kind of the chance of success of that, just based on what your financial planner has set out as the plan, then you're like, okay, well, as long as we're doing all of that, we've got this other money now to do something with, and we could, more easily take a risk because we knew we didn't have to worry about the future.
Yeah, just don't
and
feel
that we were
guilty.
doing what we're supposed to do. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I mean, you don't
Absolutely.
for spending certain money, like, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, Jeff, you and Kelly, what you might be referencing is really getting a hold of your spending, not you specifically, but a general you. I liken it to having a leaky budget or a leaky boat. If you don't know if there's money leaking out of your budget or water leaking into your boat, you're going to be less confident in taking that boat out to sea. But if you've really shored up your budget and you know that you've got a solid hull and you have no leaks and you know what spending is required in order to maintain a comfortable lifestyle, well, now all of a sudden you're freed up to really take, you can call them risks, but calculated decisions to give yourself the opportunity to achieve, a higher quality of living or personal goals, things that are important to you, as long as you have everything locked down on a micro scale. All of a sudden it's not so intimidating to step out into unknown waters.
I like that analogy a lot. That's really helpful. Okay, now, Jacob, your company, I feel like it's changed names. Is it Premier Private Wealth?
It is. Mm-hmm.
And so Jeff's going to throw that up in the chat, the website, and then also your email address. But what about the answer to that question I kind of mentioned earlier? Could anyone in the US work with you or someone in your group? How does that work?
The short answer is yes. So we have clients as far away as California and Washington State and down in the tips of Florida, all the way up to New York, New Jersey. So we really span all of the continental US. Would love to have the first client in Alaska or Hawaii. I'll be doing all review meetings in person for them. So that's going to be, it's a race to be that first person, but yeah, so we can work with anyone, anywhere. Luckily, technology has advanced to the point that we can have meetings just like this. So we have a lot of virtual meetings. Even clients that are local now sometimes will prefer a Zoom meeting just because it fits into their schedule a little bit more conveniently. And we are happy to do that up into the level that the client is comfortable. We don't, want to force someone into a virtual setting if they would prefer be in person. And we have clients that come into the office still to this day. So the answer is yes, we can work with anyone. We would love to work with anyone that is interested in what we've spoken about today and really wants to get a firm grasp on their financial situation and put together a comprehensive plan. And our goal is just to remove stress from everyone and really use foundational principles for financial planning to set everybody on the right track that we can.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting to know that, that you're not so limited. So it may actually anybody, and I would think it's probably within the US because we have some international listeners, but I'm assuming that would not apply.
Yeah, I think we would need to keep it within the US, or at least you would need US citizenship for us to be able to work with you. And fortunately or unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think when we send the link for the recording of this, we'll include your email. So if anybody has any questions based on this conversation, Jacob, thank you so much for offering that they can just email you directly. I think that's amazing. I want to put one final plug. Those of you that are listening probably already know about this, but I'm doing this new thing called Superpower Plus. So it's kind of an addition to Superpower Alliance. Superpower Alliance is going to be free forever. I promise, promise, promise. You'll have these great conversations. This is just a gift to my community. Superpower Plus is not free, but it's super cheap. It's $10 a month for EFT webinars. We're going to take one skill at a time, and I'm going to break it down. And so it's a monthly subscription. Really excited about it. You'll be getting emails about that. But for now, I think I'm gonna just thank you, Jacob. I really loved hearing your perspective, and again, really grateful for your time. And I hope people reach out to you and get the benefit of your services like we have.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope it's at least provided some perspective or context for all the listeners today. And I've really enjoyed our conversation and look forward to continuing to work with you guys in the future.
Yeah, great. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.